if you see it as saturated, then it's going to be saturated. It's going to feel saturated. And so when you're selling, it's going to come from this like needy, like, oh, Gil needs to make a sale, please buy type energy. And that is the polar opposite of what from sales dynamic.
Especially when you're first beginning, that's how you're going to stand out. You're not going to stand out by trying to be a generalist, but trying to be everything to everybody. You have to carve out your specialty, and then you can grow from there.
They don't want to buy from, Guru Joe over here. Like, they want to buy from someone who's relatable, who's just a few steps ahead of them, who has some experience and life experience that's relatable, that they can see themselves in a little bit. If you want to build a legitimate, profitable online business without shiny objects, without the hypey gimmicks, and without the stress and overwhelm, if you want to make more money without having to be present online all day, every day, pumping out content that nobody sees and hustling DMs to generate leads and sales, then this is the place for you. Welcome to the Digital Trailblazer Podcast, your online business university, where you'll learn how ordinary people start from ground zero with no influence, no email list or audience to sell to, and no business or marketing experience, and go from working 9-to-5 jobs to building successful 6- and 7-figure online businesses and all the steps in between. Learn the strategies that worked and what didn't. Learn the mistakes that they made and how to avoid them, and then learn their plans for scaling their businesses and taking things to the next level. All so that you can build your business faster and easier and make more money without sacrificing the things that are important to you in your life. I'm your host, Leah Ray Getz, and with me is my husband, Todd. Now, let's get to it with today's guest. Welcome, everyone. This is Leah Ray Getz with the Digital Trailblazer Podcast. And today we have with us Jamie Gardiner. Thank you so much for being with us today. Go ahead and introduce yourself and let everyone know what you do.
Thank you so much for having me, first and foremost. Awesome to be here. As they mentioned, my name is Jamie Gardiner. I've been a full-time affiliate and coach since 2011. And basically what I do is I show folks how to grow and monetize an audience, more specifically around a community. So think Facebook groups, school, wherever you can find a community. It's basically how I help folks out. Traditionally, that has been in the affiliate space, but also help coaches and folks with memberships and all sorts of stuff now as well. So been a wild ride.
So how did you get here then? From where did you start? How did this all begin?
How long have we got? It's somewhat of a story. I'll give you the abbreviated version. Basically, my mother set up an e-commerce store in 1996, before Amazon was an international thing, before Google. This is when it was like Alta Vista and Ask Jeeves and, real old school type stuff. And to keep an extended story somewhat shorter, effectively, I was very inspired by a lifestyle. So circa 2011, I was working in the financial markets, and meanwhile, my mother, who was running her e-commerce store, she'd pretty much outsourced everything. So it would take her around about an hour and a half a day to manage it. All the product was automatically manufactured. It was automatically shipped, and she'd just wake up with fresh money in her bank account type stuff. And she was gallivanting around the world. She went on all sorts of yacht trips, and she bought a bus and cruised around New Zealand and that. And then she lived over at Bali for a little while, and then went to Boston for a little while, did a tour on a ship over there. And I thought there's something missing here. Here I am in this very, very stressful role. I actually started in finance at the height of the global financial crisis. And so it was just absolute chaos. And so I thought, here I am working this. I did enjoy the job, actually. But here I am working this kind of crazy job, and she's just doing this thing. And so I was very inspired. I thought, okay, well, might as well follow in her footsteps. I wonder if I can use the knowledge that I have in financial markets to perhaps bring that online, maybe set up blogs, things like that. So yeah, went through all sorts of stuff. Got into CPA marketing, I have one book on Kindle many years ago. Went bankrupt in 2015, and also got into e-commerce. I thought, well, my mother is quite successful at doing this stuff. Maybe I can do something along the e-commerce line. So I set up, I don't know why, rule of three, but I set up 3 different e-commerce stores for some weird reason. I don't know why. All on things that I didn't really know anything about, like jewelry, for example. And anyway, so basically pivoted to affiliate marketing, absolutely sucked at it. I had already been doing stuff in the background. I was still writing articles on various blogs and medium.com and just pretty much everything. I was trying so much stuff, it was ridiculous. And the one constant for me throughout the entire process, or the last year and a half at that point anyway, was my Facebook group. And under the advice of a very dear friend of mine and mentor, Jacob Karras, he basically said, look, simplify what you're doing. You're running around like, and to quote Gordon Ramsay, is running around like a busy idiot. I was just on absolutely every platform and just tearing my hair out, not really knowing why things weren't working. The ironic thing is I had been in the sales role for, at that stage, 12 plus years. And so I never thought to bring my sales experience online. And he's like, well, why don't you just, you've got an audience there, just get some hand raisers, book a call. I'm like, book a call, hand it up. And something just clicked into place. And basically within, like, I kind of like had to get rid of all the stuff that I was trying. And then in a very short space of time, what was about 7 days, I went from zero to my first high ticket sale, 1K day, and was jumping for joy in my apartment, as you can imagine. And then had another one the next day. First 10K month, or it was just shy of 9,900, whatever it was. But and then that sort of just things just erupted ever since. Like I just got very narrow in my focus and just developed this process and just killed it after that. It was really good. We teamed up, Jacob and I and Chris Donnelly, the other gentleman, to produce something called the Super Affiliate Accelerator, more or less leveraging the success that Jacob had in the online space at that time as sort of the launch pad. And then within 14 months, we surpassed $1 million and won the award and stuff like that, which was pretty cool. And we ran that for 4 years, actually just closed that up in August this year. And I now have my own program and to students in that as well. So it's been quite the ride.
So in moving into your own offer, what kind of challenges and things have you had to overcome in kind of stepping out into your own and doing that after having had a successful partnership for several years? Yeah,
so it was kind of tricky because like I had a hybrid for quite a number of years. And so I didn't want to like scatter my energy for like too much because I guess my years of like setbacks and failures had been mainly because I was so scattered in my approach. I didn't really have a linear process and no kind of like solid, okay, here's my offer, let's promote that, shall we? It was more just like, I'll give everything a shot. And so I was very conscious of not doing that again. And so it was hard. So basically what I did to start with is pretty much just align with SAA, and I just formed my own coaching on top of that. And then eventually, as sort of time progressed, I realized like if I'm not going to move in my own direction, they're not going to be just whole coattails of the SAA brand. And so I sort of just made a little bit more of a shift. In terms of challenges, I guess because I left my move really late, and it sounds a little bit funny, but what happened was in the first like 3 or 4 months of us sort of like coming on the scene with SAA, we had students that basically we were trying to teach affiliate marketing, and I think they just saw, oh, these guys are making all this cash. And so they started to develop their own coaching, their own programs, things like that, modeled very closely off what we were doing as well. And so I think I, by contrast, had left my move quite late. And I think there was already a number of folks doing that at that stage. I was just sort of like joining the ranks, so to speak. So it was very challenging. And I guess also from a mindset perspective in particular, because I just assumed I would be successful. Like we were successful with this thing. I assumed I'd go out there and absolutely crush it. And it's not that I didn't, but it just, I think my idea was that it was just going to erupt, kind of like with SAA, it's 14 months and I very naively just assumed I can do that. I'll just do that again. And obviously it hasn't quite transpired in that manner. And that's been, a very big challenge for me to sort of overcome and try to figure out what the next steps are. Plus going from a team dynamic where there's effectively 3 of us, and, Jake obviously very much leading the way with that one, to kind of on my own, just figuring it all out as well. That was also really interesting. Plus, one more factor, my wife, after about 3 or 4 months of my sort of like, once things started working out in my business, we were in a place where she was able to leave her corporate role, and effectively she had been financially looking after me for some time at that point. And so I was like, cool, the roles are reversed out of me. And so she left the job, which is cool. And then at sort of around about 6 months later, after she sort of just sat on the couch watching Housewives of Beverly Hills on repeat for about 6 months, she then sort of said, well, I kind of need something to do. And it was like, okay, do I go back to work? Or like, is there anything else? I'm like, well, I kind of need some help. I wouldn't mind that. And so the other major challenge for me was, I guess, going from a husband-wife dynamic to business partners. It's obviously I'm sure you guys will be able to talk to this quite a lot. There's a lot of challenges that pop up with that type of stuff, especially if it's a new thing for you guys. So that was just a part of it as well. So.
One of the things that really stuck out to me was that whole concept of, when you were doing this, the first time you did this, like you had like that immediate explosive growth and success. And then later on, when you try to do this on your own, it wasn't necessarily that you didn't have the skill or the expertise or the know-how. It was that the market was already kind of saturated, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people feel that, especially like when you get into coaches and course creators, when you get into the, health and fitness, like almost every niche now is saturated to some point. What would you say were the key factors that helped you to get your foothold in an already existing market like that and build your business and be successful with that after it's already been saturated?
Yeah, really, really good question. I think if I touch on the word saturation, I think that's an interesting one because I don't truly believe in saturation, and my logic for thinking that way is that I heard something from, I went to an event 2019, and there was a gentleman by the name of Greg Jeffries there, and he did this little presentation, and part of it was talking about the concept of competition, and effectively, and I'll probably completely butcher it, but it was basically where drew a big circle, and he was like, look, if that's the world, then think about like how many people are online, and then how many people are specifically in your industry, and how many people actually see your content, how many friends you have. Like it just kept narrow down. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. And then he basically said, look, then on top of that, you also got the people that will persist long enough to become experts at that. And so therefore, if you can maintain that, that is how over time you're going to build brand authority. I thought, okay, that's quite logical. So yes, it's more competitive, 100%, absolutely. But I believe that purely by virtue of sticking with it, and basically marketing, just marketing what you have and the results that you have and the testimonials that you have and the student results and the mindset shifts people have, and just helping folks out as best as you possibly can. I think that's kind of how you can make your way in there as well. The other thing I probably would add to that is I think the high ticket model is amazing. However, what I've started to look at over the last couple of years is how can I continue to add recurring into my income. And I think that has, I haven't done it very well, to be perfectly honest. I've tried certain things, and I think where I'm heading next year, it's going to be pushing more into the recurring stuff and a sort of mid to high ticket level, which is not something I had pushed that heavily before. It was more kind of a low-ish ticket recurring, and I think the attrition rate was just too hard to combat. Whereas I think if you have a core set of clients that are your peeps, so to speak, that I think it's just a lot easier to have that longevity, and obviously lifetime customer value, all that type of stuff as well.
The thing that really stuck out to me was how you initially got into this, where you were doing a little bit of everything. You were kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall, and you were trying to see what worked, and you were just spread too thin. And then it wasn't until you focused, and I guess the way I see it is you kind of like niche down, kind of focus on a single offer, a single result, and that's what really helped you. And in my mind, like when we work with our clients, those are like the first two things that we really help them to focus in on is focus in on a specific result and niche down, right? Because especially when you're first beginning, that's how you're going to stand out. You're not going to stand out by trying to be a generalist, but trying to be everything to everybody. You have to carve out your specialty, and then you can grow from there.
Yes.
But in my mind, like those are like two key factors that help you to really grow, especially when you're starting out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting because I don't think I'm a conceited person, but I definitely had some ego issues. And what I mean by that is that I had put so much emotional energy into this project and that project and that project, that funnel and that email sequence, that chatbot and that social network and core and everything. And so therefore, in order for me to let go of that, it took a lot. It took a lot of like, okay, it's fine. It's still going to be there if I ever want it again. But and that was really hard to kind of, I guess, acknowledge first and foremost, because we don't like to think negatively about ourselves. It was like, okay, I think just is probably my ego holding on to that. And when I did, I think, and I sort of just accepted, like, okay, this didn't work for me, or hasn't been working for me, and how can I just realign my focus and, like I say, just really, really narrow it in? Then, yeah, just good things happen. It's, you know, it's like that whole thing of, if you got 5 hours to chop down the tree, spend 4 of them sharpening the axe type stuff. And so that's kind of what I did.
That's funny that you mentioned that about the difficulty letting go of those old funnels and those old, because in like personally for me, I've kind of realized over time that that's actually on the other side of that. I have resistance in taking on new things because I'm like, well, if I'm going to create a new funnel, or if we're going to do this new offer, it's going to require this and this and this and this, and it's going to be all this work. And if it doesn't work, then it's all wasted and blah, blah, blah. So even on the other end, it's like I have resistance on taking on new things. So it's a really, mindset wise, it's just a really difficult thing. Just letting go of the old stuff and even taking on new things.
New levels, new devils, as they say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I run into people who have some success, some expertise that they think, well, you know, that I could share that, but look at these other people. They're doing it great. Why? Well, who would I ever attract? And I think it's really important for people, those who are listening, who are watching, to understand that you will attract your tribe. Like, that there's so many people in the world, and like your voice will resonate. Some people hate me. Like, I ain't gonna lie. I'm totally cool with it. They don't like me for whatever reason, and that's fine, because I am authentically me in all my content, and people who get me fall in love. Like, they just absolutely become a super fan, right? And that's what you want, is to be super authentic. And there will be people out there, they don't want to buy from, you know, Guru Joe over here. Like, they want to buy from someone who's relatable, who's just a few steps ahead of them, who has some experience and life experience that's relatable, that they can see themselves in a little bit. Because, I mean, that is huge. I can't tell you how many people that have purchased, like right when we were first beginning, I had people purchasing from us who chose us over the big guy because we were only a few steps ahead of them, right? Yeah. Because we were relatable. And there's umpteen other options, but they chose us because we were putting ourselves out there and getting seen. And that's really what it comes down to.
And the thing is, even at that time, and this was like 2016, 2017, like our marketing was worse. Like it was very amateurish, you know, our branding, you know, because we did everything ourselves. We're kind of shoestringing it, and we still got, and the thing is, because of that relatability factor. And I think because of that, we were relatable. It was, you know, built at no like and trust factor. And like Leah was saying, you know, we're just 1 or 2 steps ahead. And that's what people mostly want to learn from, is people who they can see that are just like them, but they've had success somewhere that they haven't had success yet. And that's, for us, that's how we made our first 7-figure year, was just by being that person and creating a course that was accessible to them, to help them to reach the level that we even hadn't reached at that point. One of the things that you mentioned about, you know, recurring revenue and things like that, like going from high ticket, and, you know, you're getting new clients every month, and then you get new clients and you got to go back the next month and you got to get new clients. And now there's this whole push. I think that the big thing that has really kind of fueled this was this whole linchpin idea from Russell Brunson and Clickfunnels, right? And ever since he put out that presentation in that book, now everybody's like obsessed with recurring revenue and memberships and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And in my mind, like when I see that, like if you haven't been around long enough, and we haven't even been around that long, it's been like 2015, 2016. But even back then, I remember when the whole push towards high ticket started, because people were sick of the churn of monthly memberships, or of having to do low ticket stuff and having nothing else after that, right? And so there was this whole big push towards high ticket back then. And now it's funny to kind of see it coming around full circle, where it's like, oh, everybody's doing high ticket. Now let's switch and let's do memberships and recurring revenue. And it's like, I bet within another 3 to 5 years, people are going to figure out once again that, oh, there's churn. You have to, you know, there's fulfillment. There's all these other issues with memberships. And now there's going to be another push towards high ticket or something, right? It's just this continual cycle. What I feel that really we need to focus on is because these are just shiny objects. These are things that have been around forever. And it's just, now that I've been around long enough, I can see, okay, now they're pushing high ticket. Okay, now they're pushing memberships. Okay, now I can see the next thing that's coming. I think you just need a good mix, right? Like you can't just rely on one and expect your business to survive on that forever, because it's a very difficult way to build your business and to continually run your business that way. And I think having high ticket is good, but also having a recurring monthly membership in addition to that is what you want to do as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's baking in different layers of the income cake, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, me personally, I feel like high ticket is always going to be there because people are going to want proximity and whatnot as well. Plus, let's face it, like if you're selling something that's like $100 a month versus say something that's like a 5K coaching, then clearly there's a lot more immediate LTV that comes off the back of that as well. So therefore, I feel like having the high ticket, obviously that's where I feel like a chunk of most people's income's going to come from, but being able to balance it out. I was going to make a comment before as well on the back of what you're both saying is that one thing I've expressed to my students before is that, and I was sort of like nodding my head when you're talking before there, because I feel like sometimes folks that are just at the beginning actually have somewhat of a competitive advantage, because like I think if we say, okay, we made 100K a month or 50K or whatever it is, then it's so far removed from what most people's reality is. Whereas if you're just like, just a couple of steps, I think it's just super relatable and super like they feel they can achieve that a little bit easier than like the person a little bit further down the track there. So that was quite refreshing to hear someone else echo something that I've kind of felt for quite some time as well. So that's cool.
I mean, we have the numbers to back that up too, because we test headlines all the time and we've tested lead magnets and things like that. And so, where we've had things where it's like, hey, build a 7-figure business versus your 20K blueprint. Like the 20K blueprint far outperforms the 7-figure business, right? And it's because number one, it's just more attainable and reachable, and it's the immediate need, right? It fulfills that immediate need for people that eventually I want a 7-figure business, but I haven't even made my first sale yet. I haven't gotten my first client. And so, when you're thinking about marketing online and what's really going to convert the best, a lot of times it's just fulfilling that immediate need of how do I generate leads? How do I get my first client? How do I even reach my first 10 or 20K month, right? And I think that's why those things convert better than these big, huge, numbers, 6-figure month, 7-figure year, whatever it is.
It's interesting. I actually literally just finished up a 3-day virtual event thing that we launched, and it was my colleagues and I were kind of figuring out what do we call this thing and what are we aiming for, and we're like, well, 10K per month has been done to death. It's still very relevant, don't get me wrong, but like it feels almost like cliche at this point. So we're like, what about your next 30K? Your next 30K. So then it was like posing it as in like, you could be at 100K, but maybe you want the next 30, or you're at 0, you want the next 30 type stuff. And just for something different for that exact reason. It's easier for people to assimilate with, I think, rather than go, cool, let's get into 7 figures. Maybe just my first sale.
Well, and I'm curious about your actual, your group strategies. Like what's working really well for you and your clients when it comes to groups and communities?
Yeah, really good question. So we're going to give away all the secret sauce. So I'm like, okay, let's just do it. Right. So
get your notebooks out.
Yeah. Basically, all right, gather around everyone. Basically, what I kind of discovered through a lot of field testing, mentoring, like time in the trenches, is basically the membership questions when someone enters your group, they are an absolute gold mine for data mining. And so you can figure out like where their state or stage of awareness is. You can figure out like what their pain points are. You can figure out like how to enter that conversation, both through your content and obviously in the DMs, things like that as well. And so the 3 questions I have, and obviously, for the audience, you probably need to get a little bit creative with these. It might not be super relevant to your audience, but the first one I've got is, what's the number one thing you'd like to learn from this community? And what I've discovered is I'd go into groups and people would be like, what are you struggling with? And that causes a cognitive dissonance. People just emotionally shut up. I'm not telling them. What do you mean? How presumptuous of you to assume that I am struggling with anything? Life is peachy, leave me alone. And so if you put it the other way, what it does is it actually taps into what effectively they would like to learn, which has a positive tense to it. But then as part of that, it actually reveals what their major deficiency is, right? And so you can start to develop your content based around that, which then means that you can, like, sounds a little bit ninja, you can kind of tap into the subconscious with your content, especially if you record their answers and then you're using that in your messenger conversations, if you're using these exact words in your content, things like that. It just, people will see what they have put down and they would read it, which is kind of cool. Other one was just a permission to pitch. I've helped 1 trillion clients make over $1 billion each. Would you like me to reach out to explain how? Obviously, I may have exaggerated the numbers there, but it's basically just, hey, this is how I help my clients. Would you like me to reach out to explain how that happens? Which that effective. Basically, what it means is that it's not just like hammering the DMs and like pitching straight away, but you can quite literally enter the conversation straight away. Like, hey, by the way, you mentioned that you'd like me to reach out to explain how this happens. Is there any free information I can get you? Like, where are you at in your business? And so what the benefit of that does is, instead of a lot of my students, they are doing just organic marketing or DMing folks and whatnot. And that's fine, but a lot of the time, if you are in, say, affiliate marketing and you're just getting started, then you might not necessarily have sales under your belt. And so what that means is that there is a sort of like, how to put it, there's like the alpha and the beta in the sales dynamic. And so often it means there's this really weird dynamic plays out in this. Well, how many sales have you made? Well, how many sales have you made? 1 billion sales? How many trillion sales? And so it's kind of like this ego-based conversation where no side is willing to give up. But if you have a group that actually bypasses that, because it's an assumptive conversation you have, like, oh, hey, you mentioned that you'd like me to reach out to help you. And so you're already straight away in the sales dynamic, which is kind of cool. You already have that positioning in the conversation. It's not necessarily that you get a close all of them, but it just does help in that regard. Last question I have is, do you have an affiliate offer? If you don't have any, just type none. And the reason for that, and you could obviously change that to do you have a coaching offer or whatever. And the reason for that is I want to get a feel for where they are in their journey. So usually Schwartz stage of awareness. Want to make sure that they have an understanding. If they are someone who's brand new, I don't know what the stuff it is. Like, cool. Well, the conversation I have with them is going to be way different, because obviously there's a longer indoctrination period, I guess, or incubation, what you want to call it, as opposed to someone who is solution aware and they're kind of just like, cool, what you got? Well, here's the thing that I've got that's specifically designed for the problem that you've just stated, right? So I can kind of get a sense of that, and it just means that both my marketing and my messaging is significantly different for the two kind of two parties, basically. On top of that, the other thing that I do and what I sort of teach is basically to rapidly build a bond with your audience. And you do that in a number of ways. I think you sort of touched on this earlier, but I think being the truest version of yourself, I think really helps, because when you're authentic, like, people can spot it a mile away. And so the rapid bonding method is basically where, for lack of better terminology, it's like where you are effectively force-feeding value in some ways. And so the way that I do that is twofold. One is I've got a lead magnet. It's just I call it a welcome pack. It's just a bit of training. There's a little bit of authority building there, a few testimonials, things like that. And then there's a call to action, the next step. So that's one. I give that to folks if they want it. The other thing is I tag everyone into either a welcome video, which again just is designed to give extraordinary amounts of value, or alternatively just in the guide section you can break them up, because I think the mistake that I do have at the moment is I think it's like a 40-minute video as my welcome video, but just the mistake is that I probably should have chopped it up and put it in the guide section to just have little bite-sized chunks, I think, rather than this big thing. I think it's too much for folks when they first meet me and they're like, who's this guy? I'm not listening to 40 minutes of him rambling on the screen. So probably a little bit of advice there is just if you can chop it up, people's attention span's pretty short these days, so that's probably better in the guide section. But that's kind of it. And basically what that means is that, and I've had this play out quite a number of times, which is very kind of ironic actually, that people, they'll be guarded. They'll be like, they'll ask me to reach out, and I will, and then they'll just, one word answers, thumbs up, that's about it, or ghost me. And then they might happen to see like a little bit of content, and it's designed to help them. But also, I'm not shy about my authority. Like I talk about my wins and stuff, and I'm very transparent about. But the last 8 years prior to that were really hard, and I'm really just upfront with that. So I think because of the fact that I'm not trying to hide things like my bankruptcy, years of failure along the way, I think that then helps to build that bond. So oftentimes, people that were guarded, they're like, "Oh, you've done some stuff." Like, okay, cool. We just do, and so then that tends to just help as well. And so then, as a result of that, folks just sort of like pour their heart out in terms of what their frustrations are, and if I can help them, I will try. If I can't, then I will point in the right direction type stuff. And I think having that approach just on that last part as well has been massively beneficial, because it would be great if everyone we speak to just automatically buys all our stuff and they love us, right? But the way to view this stuff, and going back to our conversation earlier about competition, things like that, is that if you see it as saturated, then it's going to be saturated. It's going to feel saturated. And so when you're selling, it's going to come from this like needy, like, oh, Gil needs to make a sale, please buy type energy. And that is the polar opposite of what we want from a sales dynamic. Instead of like looking after the other person, go, well, actually, I believe they might be a good fit for my thing, but I'm not feeling it. Maybe there's something better out there for them. And so if you have that sort of approach where you're actually trying to like help the other person out, and not just because you need a sale, it works magic, because then they can smell it. Right, they're kind of like, oh, this person's actually trying to help me. What a unique thing in this world. And then, of course, you're going to make more sales anyway, because then you don't have a need to sell to everyone, because you know that not everyone is going to be your jam. And so if you can carry that energy into your conversations, and to, even as woo-woo as it may sound, even when you're producing content, you're just like, just the fun of writing content, as opposed to like needing it to be the thing that converts every single time. Then it'll be a lot more fun as well. So anyway, that was quite a rant. I hope there's some nuggets all in there.
Yeah, I was going to say there's like questions I had, but I didn't want to speak up because I'm talking. I was like, get as much out as I can. One of the things that you mentioned at the very beginning was the questions that people answer, and that data that you get when they enter the group, and how you formulate those questions is really important. And that was something that we found out ourselves, like almost exactly like the way you stated it was like, that's exactly the way I explain it. It's like, if you ask somebody, hey, what's your biggest struggle, right? What's the biggest thing that's holding you back from your goal or whatever? And the thing is, like that script or that line, I remember, because we bought courses back in 2015, 2016 that taught us how to use those lines in our direct messenger conversations and everything else to get prospects for our network marketing business, is what we were doing back then. And I remember reading those lines and saying, well, if somebody said this to me, there's no way I'd answer that. But that's what was being taught, and so everybody was using it. And so when we started getting into Facebook groups, just like you were doing, like that's the way that we had kind of stated that question at first was, what's the biggest struggle you have in your business right now? And what we found is that people would either not answer, or they'd just be incredibly generic or something like that. And it was not useful information. Mm-hmm. And when we changed it to something that was that didn't raise resistance, right? Something where we weren't making people admit their own faults or their own shortcomings. And I think the way that we phrase it now is something to the effect of, we do training in this group on a regular basis. What's the number one question you have that you'd like us to train on, or something like that? And when we did that, then we were suddenly getting like all this like gold mine of information of people putting in their own words exactly the biggest struggles they have, the biggest questions, the things that they wanted to learn from us, and the things that they wanted to get out of the group. And that made our marketing just 100 times more effective, not just in the group, not just our content, but our VSLs, our sales calls, everything else that we were doing, because of that information that we were getting. And so I think that was just an incredible gold nugget, that stating things in just a different way that is not going to raise resistance is really important. And getting that information from your from your future customers, and having them put it in their own words to tell you what it takes for them to be sold is really important.
Yeah, very, 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 very powerful. Because it's that thing of like, what's the saying? Everyone loves buying, but no one likes being sold to. And I think, like you say, if there is a resistance popping up, it's probably because it's touching a nerve, and it might also be that they are unconscious about what they're like. I don't know why I'm struggling. Like, you tell me. Like, a lot of the time they just don't have an awareness of it, because it's like, I feel like I've tried everything. What I don't know. Tell me, you're the expert. And so you probably end up building those sort of emotional walls when you approach like that. So awesome to hear that you'll also have that same approach. It's obviously worked out pretty well.
Yeah, our group has worked really well for us over the years. I'm curious, though, do you take your messenger conversations to sales calls, or do you have a different approach? Because I know for us, when we're talking with people and they want to learn more, we book calls. So we move everything to a phone call. So what does that look like for you?
I have a very scattered approach. I think by nature I'm somewhat of a scattered person, and so I think I also suffer from the entrepreneurial curse, where I get bored of stuff really quickly, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to try this now. And so I've closed hundreds of thousands with the DM, hundreds of thousands with the doc, hundreds of thousands, or millions actually with sales calls. And so this makes me sound kind of half crazy here, but like, it just depends on the mood. It really does, like how busy my week is. And it's probably why, and to be perfectly honest, it's probably why the business, it's not that it's stalled, it just hasn't taken that massive next step as well. And I think it's because I some days I'll DM, and sometimes I'll do a little micro launch, something like it just, so if I could offer any advice for anyone out there that's watching this going, I'm going to try all three of those as well, I would suggest to heed my advice. Do as I say, not as I do. You'll be well off. But in my opinion, and this is in our tiny little part of the world, it's not a very popular opinion, but I actually think that having a one-on-one conversation is the most efficient way that you can sell stuff. Basically, I think that even if I jump on a call and I'm not actively selling, what I mean is that if I'm just aiming to provide a ton of value, and then I just happen to ask at the end, by the way, do you have any plans moving forward? And that's as like aggressive as my sales approach goes. And I find that has an extraordinary close rate, because I don't like do any objection handling. Cool, go away and think about it. Here's some stuff to read through. Let me know if I can help. And I find that with that, because I tend to overload the value up front, and I take the time to listen to folks when I am on a call, it just tends to work out really well. And I think the other part about a sales call is that, I don't know, it's this thing where sometimes in Messenger, there's cultural differences, there's nuances, there's a different way that you might express yourself versus, even between us three, for example, we might say something like, oh, that's an interesting slang, I haven't heard that before, but like, it gets misconstrued. And so therefore, like, you can't read the full context. So you might have a preconception about someone, and then you get them on a call, and it's just like, oh, hey, sorry, I'm actually dyslexic, but just normal humans, happen to not be great at messenger conversations. And so therefore, I often think, well, I would rather get face to face, read the energy, see if I can help them out as well. That's the thing. But like I say, I also have sold a lot through a lot of different mechanisms. So anyway.
So are you into paid ads at all? Or is it all organic for you at this point?
Almost all of it is organic. And I say almost all because I ran an agency for, I say agency, it's just easier than saying I was a freelancer doing ads, basically. And so, but then until my ad account got smited back to the dark ages, thanks to Facebook. And I tell you what, that Zuckerberg is definitely off my Christmas card list. But anyway, story for another time. But look, I have I started getting into YouTube ads. I've run some YouTube ads. Made a couple of mistakes with that. One was I did close. I was actually broken even off a $2,500 product, and the mistake that I made was that it should have been a 5K basically. So I actually, had I been selling at 5K level or beyond, then it would have been profitable at that time, but I didn't. So it's kind of break even, and I like more or less ran out of cash and mojo for it. And so then the other thing I'll try at the moment is a couple of TikTok ads, but nothing sort of super serious. So pretty much all organic at this point.
when it comes to what you're doing in your group and everything, it's just you, or do you have setters or other people that you work with?
Just me at the moment. My wife was working with me full time. She was actually, secret sources out now. Everyone's going to, okay. She used to be me in the DM. So she would get into my account, because obviously same IP address and whatnot was fine. She'd jump into my account, she'd DM folks, she'd get calls booked for me, which was really cool. And she was really, really good at it and created all these efficiencies that my brain can't add. So she's really good at it. And it got to this point where I realized, because she'd been in design, she was in interior design for 14 years before she quit. And I realized that she was losing a sense of identity, because then if we were out and we're meeting people, so what do you do? I help Jamie with his business. Like, I don't know, it was such a weird thing. So long story short, she's gone to set up her own empire selling stuff on Etsy, which is really cool. Absolutely crushing it. But to your point, that was kind of random, but to your point, no, there's just me, basically. I do have one of the coaches, Chris Donnelly from SA. I've brought him along with me for Ultimate Micro Mastermind. But I'm sort of going through this transitional phase at the moment where there's a few things up in the air. I'm not entirely sure what the future looks like in terms of audience and avatar and stuff like that as well. So, yeah.
So when you say you're getting your traffic in building organically, what does that mean? What does it look like? Like, is this traffic from other places on Facebook? Is this a YouTube channel? Is this how are you getting that traffic?
Yeah, so I do have a YouTube channel. I don't know how this sounds, but I'm not very confident when it comes to recording video. I don't enjoy it at all, but I'm so determined to make it work that I've got a YouTube channel, like 800-900 videos on it, just because I'm so determined to make it work. But my thing with YouTube is I don't treat it as top of funnel. I'm not really looking to get a whole bunch of new leads from it. Sometimes I do get leads, and it's made conservatively a couple $100,000 by now, maybe more. And not from top of funnel, though. It's usually because I treat it more as a middle of funnel mechanism, as in, I'll send emails to videos I put out, things like that, just to deepen that relationship. More time with me, I guess, more consumption. But mainly in terms of the organic stuff, it's just the old school stuff. It's prospecting, just going and finding friends and targeting people. And I do also have a VA that does a lot of prospecting for me as well. So he goes and finds folks and invites them into my group as well. That hasn't been super efficient of late though, so I probably going to can that. But yeah, a lot of it's just through reels. And just, I guess, once you get a little bit of traction in your business, it's sort of like what's that book, Jim Collins, the flywheel effect, and he talks about the flywheel effect, where it's, you get one win that sort of compounds on itself. And I feel like a lot of the time, once you reach a certain level, then it just starts to take on a little bit of a life of its own. Once you start producing content, you just kind of, sometimes it's not so good. With kind of like a target on your back with everything. Other times it's fun. You just sort of have people show up in your world, which is really cool.
That momentum and that it builds, especially when you're in an ecosystem like Facebook, where it is an ecosystem, where there's all of these different components. And if you're doing reels and you're doing content in your group and you're engaging in networking, all of those things just compound upon each other and work really well. Facebook has been really good to us in our business. What do you feel like is your next step? Like, where do you go from here?
I still love Facebook groups, and I still think that the idea of a community is going to be there for a long time. I think, till AI takes us all over or whatever. But anyway, topic for another time. But effectively, what I'm looking at doing is how can I remove all the layers of acquisition, basically. And at the moment, I still feel like I have a couple of layers. Like, going to put out content, going to go find people, going to try and create sort of a sense of engagement and whatnot. Plus, as well as looking after my students and all that type of stuff as well. And so I still feel there's a couple of layers there. And so I got a kind of a plan at the moment to basically transition into some ads, maybe looking at TikTok. There's a couple of kind of strategies I'm contemplating with that. And then also just adjusting the avatar that I'm currently serving at the moment, which is sort of, it's a little bit stuck in my mind at the moment with that one. It's sort of like, how do I take the skill set that I have, which has obviously worked very well for a lot of folks, but how do I take that and then just sort of adjust that? So going through this weird sort of transitional phase in my business at the moment. but I'm sort of enjoying figuring it out as well though. So, but yeah, I've got some very, very lofty goals for 2024. And one of which, as I sort of alluded to earlier, which is just building in that recurring side of things. And I think where I'll probably be leaning more with that is more of a high ticket recurring. The model seems to work well, and it means that you have close contact with a small set of people as opposed to looking at, building a larger group, so to speak. And that sort of appeals to me. I think it's that thing where I think about all the students that I've really enjoyed working with, and these are all people I would go out for a beer with or whatever, you know what I mean? And so I think those, like, if I can do that with a small set of people that I help them achieve their goals, then it's, it's obviously pretty awesome. Plus, and also, I guess from a mindset perspective, because of the last, like, maybe 5 months, and I'm sort of like trying to figure this transition out, what it's meant is I've been very conscious of it, of that thing where I was saying earlier about, you sell the high ticket and you're like, yeah, it's awesome. But then because let's say, oh, okay, well, the feast or famine, next month, it's like, okay, do I have to do a launch or a promo cycle? Like, what am I doing here? And so I think as part of that, I just want to like stabilize. And I think, like I said, from a mindset perspective, just to have a somewhat more stable baseline income, I think it's going to be helpful for the growth. So targeting some very big figures, but that's kind of sounds like politicians' answer. I just seem to like talk around the answer, really.
I gotcha. You're fine.
Yeah.
You're fine. Well, I've got some ideas. I mean, based on what you've said so far, I think you've got your Facebook group funnel dialed in, which is awesome. I think to really just some things to think about.
Sure.
Okay. So if you get some Facebook ads running, lead gen ads, and on the thank you page, you're driving to the group. So less kind of hustle in the messenger to get people in, right? A little bit easier on that. But then also sneaking on a setter, having someone who can help manage the group, have those conversations, even under their accounts, but have essentially a setter going through and doing all of your discovery calls, whether those are through Messenger, through outbound dials, or all of that, so that you can just focus on somebody who's qualified. They've been financially qualified. They're all set and ready to go, and they're queued up on a sales call for you, right? And then you can work on the other aspects of your business and really let them do some of that busyness that can take a ton of time, and that could really allow you to scale really well. I know we have ebbs and flows in our business with team members coming and going and whatever. But if like I can make do with a lot of things, but don't get rid of my setter. Like,
yeah,
I can't go back to that. Like, please.
Wow. Okay.
So
interesting.
So, yeah, I think that would be a good addition in a way for you to stay focused on the highest income producing activities that you can do, and just automate some more of the process, with ads and things coming in. So,
and I think at your point in business, it makes sense to start building a team that can take over these the busy work for you. Because, a lot of people, when they want to bring on a setter or a sales closer or whatever, a lot of times they're not even at a revenue level that they could support paying somebody to do something, because they're typically commission based, right? And so, I mean, on the low end for a setter, we would say you're going to pay 3% of cash collected. On the high end, maybe 10% of cash collected, depending on the ticket value of your offer. You may or may not have a base pay on top of that. But the thing is, like, when you bring someone in, you want them to be able to work full time. You don't want them, meddling around on other things. You want to be able to bring them in full time, so that, when you train them in, they're fully committed. They know your system, just as well as you do. Because if you're going to invest your time into them, you need to make sure that they're taken care of, and that they're going to be able to stick around. So they need to be paid well, and they need to be full time. So when you're considering bringing out a setter, those are like kind of the main things. Are you making enough revenue where if say 50 to 100% of your sets are coming from them, are they going to make enough in commissions for them to work this full time? All right, that's number one. And then number two is, are they going to be worth the investment of your time and energy to train them in? Is that the right person for the job, right? Because you don't there's a lot of people out there that are advertising, oh, call centers, $1,000 a month, and they work full time, 80 cents a week or 80 cents a month guaranteed, or you don't pay, or what. It's not worth it, because you're getting someone from Pakistan, you're getting somebody from India, these third world countries. English is not their first language. They're just working off a script. There's no thought process behind, what they're doing. And they're usually using a fake profile as well, or they're using your profile, which is even worse, because now, someone's logging into your profile from a different IP address halfway across the world, and it's just asking for Facebook to come and shut down your account, right? So, having a setter that's based in the same country as you are, that's able to use their own account, that you can invest that time and energy into is just, once you get them and they're trained in and they're running, it is just golden. It helps you to do so much more in your business, because it frees up your time to do the higher level income producing activities.
That's really powerful. As you were chatting, it reminded me of, I've actually got a very good friend of mine who I used to work with in the finance days. And so we used to sell like trading accounts where people would drop money and trade futures and options, things like that. And so it was quite fast paced, as you can imagine. And so he's like chomping at the bit. And so as you're talking, I'm like, oh, that's right, you've got my friend. Maybe I'll get him on board, and maybe that's the catalyst to growth next year, perhaps, I think.
So if people are curious to learn more about how to leverage groups to build their business, where do they find you?
Probably the easiest way is just to head to jamiegardiner.com. It has my links to my Facebook group and a bunch of stuff that can absorb through that as well. So that's probably the easiest way.
Awesome. Well, this has been so much fun. No, I think this has been great. Really, really helpful, insightful for folks. I think communities are super powerful mechanisms for nurturing people to leveraging into sales, especially in the high ticket space where they need a lot more loving. They need to really feel that know, like, and trust, right, and before they make a purchase. So it's a beautiful strategy. We've used it for years in our business, and we teach it as part of our strategy. But I think what you're doing is awesome, and I love it.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and I just want to say thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. Thanks for being with us today. You've been listening to the Digital Trailblazer podcast. For show notes and information about today's guest, head to digitaltrailblazer.com. Now, if you love this episode, if you got some value, make sure you leave us a review and subscribe. And be sure to share this episode with anyone you know who could use help to build their business. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.